Hello, I'm the biochemist, and I've got an experiment. I'm searching for the highs, the lows, and the mids of the PlayStation catalog here on the PS1 Library Deep Dive. Today, we're looking at Tekken 1, the influential fighting game. Let me know in the comments if it's the best fighting game franchise or if you think it's overrated. Is this first installment still any good today, or did it age poorly? Let's find out. But first, we gotta start where all games start, and that, of course, is the cover art. 20 seconds, let's go. Tekken's roster is portrayed here with a nice sunset background to set the scene. The blood red Tekken at the top gives it a grindhouse feel. The character models look really detailed, so they're not the in-game models, but they do portray the style of Tekken very nicely. Only complaint is that it's Jack that's like hovering in the background over KAZUYA when obviously it should be Heihachi. Not really sure why they didn't do that, but hey, it's a classic Lombox cover and it portrays the game's vibe pretty well.
That's why when it comes to Tekken and the King of Iron Fist tournament, there's one hell of a story to tell.
So Tekken was created by Namco, probably the second most famous and influential Japanese video game company that starts with an N and ends with an O. Namco created classics like Pac-Man and Galaga in the 1980s and continued their success by releasing Tekken arcade cabinets in 1994. It made its way onto the American PlayStation only a couple of months after the system's debut, dropping into players' hands during the holiday season of 1995. Tekken became a household name worldwide very quickly, reportedly selling over 1.5 million units between Japan and North America. How's it hold up today? Let's find out. So the face buttons on the controller match up with each limb of your fighter, so you should have some basic knowledge on how each fighter works. I'm sure you all know that, since Tekken's of course one of the most successful fighting franchises of all time, with a strong presence in the arcade and at home for decades. There are 8 basic characters who you start with, and according to the lovely GamesFAQ user Loki, there are a total of 18 characters you can unlock by winning. Many, if not all, the unlockable characters are newly playable in the console version, having not been available in the arcade cabinets. The unlockable guys are basically sub-bosses that correspond to each character, and they're derivatives of the basic guys. So you pick a combatant and arcade mode starts. My go-to is always martial law for the Tekken series. Based off of Bruce Lee, he's very quick and has some combos that aren't too tough to pull off, but pack some punch. He's also very acrobatic and just kind of fun to play. That being said, I suck at this game. I suck at all fighting games, but I do think Namco's franchises of Tekken and Soul Calibur are probably my favorites, largely because of how smooth they are. Each punch and kick has a natural flow to them, and they're very intuitive because of their control scheme. Now it's been a while, but with my memories of later Tekken games, this first installment here doesn't quite have that flow quite down pat. It can also be hard as hell to just get up when you're knocked down. It seems very delayed sometimes, and I can't really tell why. Obviously, being downed is a pretty bad spot to be in when you're fighting. It's hard to be mad at the first installment of the series for being a bit clunky though, so we're just gonna fight through it. That being said, returning to the original after modern installments is a bit of a shock. Not being a fighting game expert, there's not a ton for me to say here, I guess. There aren't any projectiles in Tekken as far as I know, like the ones you see in Street Fighter or Mortal Kombat, so you don't have to worry about people spamming that type of stuff from afar. Instead, Tekken gives you a more intimate hand-to-hand combat, which was fresh for the time, I'd say. Not that there was a lack of fighting games or anything in the mid-90s, but hey, Tekken had a clear identity, and that's what it stuck to. In Tekken 1, you're also stuck to a 2D plane here. Future installments quite literally add another dimension to the gameplay, which is something that's super noticeable going back to the original here. You may not notice it when playing now, but that third dimension really adds a lot to the game. Yeah, Tekken 1 is pretty bare bones. You get arcade mode when you want to fight against the CPU, and 2-player mode for battling your friends. No frills here, you bought a fighting game and that's what you're gonna get. For the era, this is a perfectly fine amount of content, plenty of characters to unlock, and each main character has story FMVs you get upon completion. I would be remiss to ignore one little aspect of the game, and I mean little, but it's interesting. A common complaint of disc-based games, faced in the mid-90s especially, was their loading times. Namco was surely aware of this ahead of their fighting game debut on Sony's gray box in 1995, so they said screw it, let's give the players something to do while they gotta wait for the game to load. When you first boot up Tekken, Namco's arcade classic Galaga pops up and lets you play it for as long as you'd like. This was a major success in stymieing whiny impatient gamers from falling asleep at the controller, so much so that Namco decided to patent the idea of loading screen minigames. That's right, you can Google US patent 5718632A to see it for yourself. The patent only expired in 2015, meaning that the great idea belonged only to Namco for 2 decades of gaming history. Ironically, the loading times aren't even that bad here, especially for the era, so Namco could have just gotten away with doing nothing. Alright, the graphics. In game, the backgrounds are really nice to look at, I'd say. Everything's colorful, if not a little basic. Just a bunch of outdoor settings, fields, empty dojos, temples, stuff like that. Some reviews from the time actually lambasted the basic empty settings, but I kind of like them. They set a scene that feels like an epic one-on-one showdown from martial arts films or something. For me, the problem with the graphics is actually in the models of the characters. Many look solid, like KAZUYA, Heihachi, Michelle, others not so much. Jack is a robot with a body built like a genie coming out of its bottle. Huge up top, but tapers off to a minuscule waist. Yoshimitsu is such a unique character, but he's freaking scary in this one. Look at him. Oh, and remember when your grandma told you not to make funny faces or it would stick like that? Yeah, martial law didn't listen to his grandma. In general, the joints aren't that smooth, so they kind of look like dolls or action figures. The textures on everyone, though, I gotta say are pretty solid for the time. Everything is a bit rough around the edges, and it'll only get improved upon in the sequels. As far as graphics go, Tekken 1 is probably most infamous for its full motion videos. When beating the arcade mode with each character, you unlock a little video of the victor you won with. The character models get even worse here, to be honest, with their plasticky Toy Story look. Let's get into the story of Tekken a little bit, because it's actually kind of interesting. You only get drip fed the story through the little videos in game, but let's dive into the Tekken wiki to get the real juice. So the short of it is, the King of the Iron Fist tournament is being held by a company. Being the quite literal final boss of said company will bring you fame and fortune, so everyone is vying for the opportunity. One man, KAZUYA, is actually the son of head honcho Heihachi. As a child, KAZUYA was banished by his father, getting thrown off of a cliff by him. Now he wants revenge. And like a violent Japanese soap opera, that's what he's gonna get. Anyway, that's what I see as the main story here, though every character has their own little arcs and motivations. Here's the iconic ending where KAZUYA gives Heihachi his comeuppance.
I won!
The music is well composed, but I can't say it exactly screams fighting game music to me. Here's a song from the stage Fiji. And here's Venezia. It just doesn't sound like the orchestra you'd hear when you're fighting somebody in the streets or in a field, you know? Now this is the part of the video where we dig through the credits and learn a bit more about one of the game's creators. Today we talk about Seiichi Ishii, director and main designer of Tekken. According to Moby Games, he got his start with Sega in the early 90s, working as a designer on Virtua Racing and Virtua Fighter, clearly setting the stage for 3D games that he would make soon after. According to an interview I found, one of the highlights of his career seems to be how much influence Virtua Fighter had on the industry. Tekken and Tekken 2 are where he got his fame, I'd say, obviously huge successes. Surprising to me though, he wasn't around when the series really started hitting its stride in Tekken 3 and Tekken Tag. Instead, he had his own company, Dream Factory. They went on to create some cult hits like Air Guys and The Bouncer in the late 90s and early 2000s. He doesn't have many credits since then though, with his last credit being a special thanks in the 2011 game Metal Max 2 Reloaded for the DS, according to Giant Bomb. Since then, he said in an interview that he's just been working on games alone, but he's interested in collaborating with others again. Based on some updates in 2023, he's working on a project called Brain Fighter. Here's the only clip I found for it so far. There's not much buzz surrounding it, but it seems that it's being designed as something called a DAO, or Decentralized Autonomous Organization. My limited understanding is that it's a way to run a company kind of like on a blockchain like crypto. I don't really get it, but hey, Ishii, we admire you, we admire your past endeavors, and wish you success in your future projects. Thank you for checking out this video. Hope you enjoyed. Please comment down below to suggest what we should play next. We'll be spinning the wheel real soon. Up next, spring is finally upon us, so we're going to take on Triple Play Baseball 1997.